Commander Vectar stood in the bridge of his flagship watching reports flood in from across the ship. Each message brought worse news than the last. 12 elite hunters were dead in the biodome. Security teams were chasing shadows through maintenance. Corridor's communication systems were sending false orders that created chaos throughout the vessel. The massive Vorthak leader had conquered 47 worlds during his military career. No species had ever successfully resisted the Vorthak Empire. For more than a few days, most civilizations surrendered immediately when they learned what they faced. But 3 primitive humans were systematically destroying his ship's operations and killing his best warriors. Vectar activated the main communication channel connecting him to the entire Vorthak invasion fleet. 17 ships carrying 50,000 warriors waited in the outer system, preparing for the conquest of Earth. The fleet commanders expected regular reports, but Vectar had been delaying communication to avoid explaining his problems. Admiral Zek's Ran appeared on the main screen, his scarred face showing the impatience that made him famous throughout the Empire. Commander Vectar, your reports are overdue. What is the status of the human specimens? We need biological data before beginning the invasion. Vectar hesitated for the first time in his military career. The 3 humans had been captured for study before the main invasion began. The plan was simple. Analyze their weaknesses, broadcast their execution to intimidate the rest of the species, then proceed with easy conquest. But nothing had gone according to plan. The humans are proving more difficult than expected. Vectar replied carefully. They appear to have combat capabilities. That our initial observations did not detect one specimen has killed multiple elite hunters, and the other 2 have compromised ship security. Admiral Zek's Ran's scaled face showed confusion followed by anger. 3 primitives are causing problems for an entire ship crew. You have 5,000 warriors aboard. Execute the humans immediately and proceed with invasion planning. We cannot delay the conquest because of minor difficulties. Before Vectar could respond, another security alert echoed through the bridge. A maintenance explosion had disabled the primary weapons system, while secondary systems were experiencing cascading failures. The human prisoners had somehow accessed critical ship operations and were conducting coordinated sabotage. Vectar realized that his reputation and possibly his life depended on resolving this crisis quickly. If word spread through the fleet that humans could resist Vorthak forces effectively, it would undermine the entire invasion plan. Worse, yet other conquered species might begin to think rebellion was possible. He activated ship-wide communication addressing all crew members directly. The human specimens will be hunted down and executed publicly. Their resistance ends now. All available personnel are ordered to capture or kill the prisoners. No warrior will rest until this matter is resolved in the biodome. Tai-Ho heard the announcement through a captured communication device. The desperation in the Vorthak commander's voice told him everything he needed to know. The aliens were losing control of their own ship and beginning to panic. This was the perfect time to escalate his guerrilla campaign. Tai-Ho had spent the last several hours studying captured Vorthak equipment and learning how their technology functioned. The weapons were energy-based, but they had familiar elements: targeting systems, power sources, trigger mechanisms. He had figured out how to modify the devices for maximum psychological impact. Using alien cutting tools, he carved messages in Vorthak script on the walls of the biodome. The words warned that death was coming for all who threatened Earth. He had learned the alien writing system by observing their equipment labels and computer displays. His messages were crude but understandable. Each dead hunter was positioned to send a specific message to the remaining Vorthak. Some were found hanging from trees like executed criminals. Others were discovered in impossible positions that suggested supernatural abilities. The aliens were starting to whisper that the human might not be entirely natural. Meanwhile, Dongmin had expanded his access to include the ship's main database. The information he found there changed everything. The Vorthak invasion fleet was not just planning to conquer Earth. They intended to enslave the entire human population and strip mine the planet of all valuable resources. The database also contained detailed information about other species the Vorthak had conquered. Most had been primitive civilizations with limited technology. but some had been advanced spacefaring races that were defeated through superior Vorthak numbers and psychological warfare based on fear. Dongmin realized that the three soldiers had an opportunity to do more than just escape. They could send a message to the entire Vorthak Empire that humans were not suitable targets for conquest. If they could create enough chaos and kill enough aliens, the invasion force might reconsider. Their plan, Sujin medical research had revealed additional Vorthak vulnerabilities that could be exploited. The aliens had enhanced immune systems that made them resistant to most diseases, but they were extremely sensitive to certain chemical combinations. Their enhanced healing abilities could be turned against them using specific compounds. Working together in the abandoned medical bay, Sujin began producing biological weapons using materials found throughout the ship. Human saliva, combined with cleaning chemicals, created compounds that would cause severe allergic reactions in Vorthak physiology. She also identified sound frequencies that would disrupt alien balance and coordination. The three soldiers established communication through the ship intercom system that Dongmin had learned to manipulate. They coordinated their efforts to maximize psychological impact on the Vorthak crew. Each action was planned to create maximum fear and confusion while advancing their tactical objectives. Tiho reported that morale among the biodome guards was collapsing. Many Vorthak were refusing assignments to hunt the human. After seeing what happened to previous teams, Commander Vektar had been forced to threaten execution for cowardice. To maintain any discipline at all, Dongmin had identified the ship main computer core and developed a plan to access navigation systems. If he could change their course, it might prevent the ship from rejoining the invasion fleet or delay the attack. On Earth, he had also learned that the Vorthak were broadcasting regular reports to other ships in the fleet. Sujin biological weapons were ready for deployment. She had created aerosol compounds that would cause respiratory distress in Vorthak, while being harmless to humans. She had also prepared injection devices using alien medical equipment that could deliver compounds to disrupt alien nervous systems. The psychological warfare was working perfectly. Vorthak crew members were reporting to medical stations with stress-related symptoms that their doctors could not treat effectively. Some aliens were refusing to enter certain sections of the ship where the humans might be hiding. Fear was spreading through the vessel like a virus. The Vorthak had built their empire on being the most frightening species in the galaxy. Now they were experiencing terror for the first time in their evolutionary history. Three primitive humans were teaching the supreme predators what it felt like to be prey. Commander Vektar made a desperate decision. He would broadcast the humans' execution to the entire fleet, showing that Vorthak's superiority remained intact. The execution would be broadcast live to all 17 ships, ensuring that every warrior witnessed human weakness and Vorthak strength. But Vektar did not know that Dongmin had already accessed the communication systems. The human corporal was monitoring all fleet communications and preparing to turn the commander's plan against him. When the execution broadcast began, it would show something very different than what Vektar expected. The three soldiers were ready to make their final stand against impossible odds. They had turned a Vorthak warship into a battlefield and proven that humans could fight effectively against superior alien technology. Now they would demonstrate that courage and determination could triumph over any enemy. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that some species should never be threatened. The humans were not primitive prey animals waiting for slaughter. They were warriors who would fight to their last breath and take as many enemies with them as possible. As the ship-wide hunt intensified, the three Green Berets prepared for the most important battle of their lives. They were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the future of humanity and sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. The empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds was about to discover that Earth would not be conquered easily. The most feared species in the galaxy was about to learn what real fear felt like when facing opponents who refused to surrender regardless of the odds against them. The thick jungle air pressed against Staff Sergeant Kim Tae-ho's face as he moved through the dense green leaves. His boots made no sound on the wet forest floor. Years of training had taught him how to walk like a ghost through any terrain behind him. Corporal Park Dong-min checked his radio equipment every few minutes while Private Lee Soo-jin kept her medical kit ready and her eyes scanning for danger. The three soldiers had been walking for 6 hours through this unnamed jungle in a country they could not talk about. Their mission was simple but dangerous. Find the enemy camp, take pictures of their weapons, and get out without being seen. Tae-ho had done missions like this many times before, but something felt different today. The air seemed too quiet and the birds had stopped singing an hour ago. Sujin whispered that she felt like something was watching them from above. Tai-ho looked up through the thick tree branches, but saw only green leaves and patches of blue sky. Dong-min adjusted his heavy radio pack and said his equipment was picking up strange signals that did not match any known military frequencies. The signals came from somewhere high above the trees, much higher than any airplane could fly. Suddenly the jungle became bright as day. A white light stronger than the sun came down through the trees. The three soldiers dove for cover behind thick tree trunks, but the light followed them wherever they went. Tai-ho shouted orders to his team, but his voice seemed to disappear in the strange humming sound that filled the air. The light grew brighter and brighter until none of them could see anything at all. When the brightness faded, Tai-ho found himself lying on a cold metal floor. His head hurt and his ears were ringing. He sat up slowly and looked around. The room was made of smooth gray metal with no windows or doors that he could see. Strange blue lights ran along the walls in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. The air smelled like electricity and something else he could not name. Dong-min and Sujin were gone. Tai-ho was alone in what looked like a prison cell, but unlike any prison he had ever seen, the walls seemed to glow with their own light, and when he touched them, they felt warm, like living skin. He stood up and examined every inch of the small room, looking for any weakness or way to escape. The ceiling was too high to reach, and the floor had no cracks or loose pieces. He tried to remember his escape training from years. How to always observe, always think, always look for opportunity. His drill instructor had said that a good soldier never stops planning even when things look hopeless. A section of the wall suddenly became transparent like glass. Tai-ho stepped back and saw a creature that made his blood run cold. It stood 7 feet tall with green scaly skin that looked thicker than armor. Its head was long, like a crocodile, but it walked on 2 legs like a man. Sharp claws extended from its fingers, and when it opened its mouth, Tai-ho could see rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. The creature spoke, but not with its mouth. Strange clicking and hissing sounds came from somewhere else while words appeared in his mind in perfect English. "We are the Fourthak Empire," the voice said in his head. "You are now property of Commander Vectar. Your species will serve or be eliminated." Tai-ho kept his face blank and his voice steady, even though his heart was beating fast. He had been captured before during training exercises and once for real in a mission that went wrong. The key was to never show fear and always gather information. "Where are my soldiers?" he asked. The creature made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your packmates are being processed. They will learn their place as you will learn yours. Your species broadcast showed us that humans are weak creatures who cannot survive without their machines. We expected you to beg for mercy by now. Instead of begging, Tai-ho asked questions about the ship, about their technology, about how many of them there were. He spoke like he was curious rather than scared. This seemed to confuse the creature, which had expected crying and pleading. The alien came closer to the transparent wall, and Tai-ho could smell something like rotting fish mixed with metal. "You are either very brave or very stupid for a primitive being," the voice said in his head. "Most species we capture spend the first day screaming." The creature pressed one clawed hand against the wall. The barrier between them disappeared like it had never been there. The alien stepped into the cell, moving with surprising speed for something so large. It grabbed Tai-ho by the throat with one massive hand and lifted him off the floor. Its claws pressed against his skin just hard enough to draw tiny drops of blood. "You will scream before this day ends, little mammal." Tai-ho did not struggle or fight against the grip. Instead, he looked directly into the creature's yellow eyes and smiled. This was not the reaction the alien expected. In that moment of confusion Tai-ho struck, he brought his head forward as hard as he could, driving his forehead into the creature's snout. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the cell. The alien dropped Tai-ho and stumbled backward, clutching its face. Green blood flowed between its claws. Taeho had broken what the creature thought was an unbreakable part of its body. The alien made horrible shrieking sounds that hurt Taeho ears. But he did not cover them. He stood ready to fight again. More aliens rushed into the cell. They carried weapons that looked like they could burn holes through metal, but they hesitated when they saw their wounded leader. The injured alien spoke in rapid clicking sounds to the others while still holding its broken snout. "Take him to the biodome," the injured alien finally said in English. "He wants to hunt. We will see how brave he feels when he becomes prey. Commander Vector will enjoy watching this primitive creature die slowly as the aliens forced him out of the cell." Taeho memorized everything he saw. The layout of corridors, the number of guards, the types of weapons they carried. He noticed that the aliens moved differently than humans. Their balance was different, and they seemed to have trouble seeing things at the edges of their vision. These were important details that might save his life later. They dragged him through long metal hallways, past rooms filled with strange machines and alien creatures working at tasks he could not understand. Some of the creatures stopped their work to stare at him. Word was already spreading through the ship about the human who had injured a Vorthak interrogator. The biodome was a massive room that looked like it contained entire forests and deserts from different worlds. Trees and plants in colors that did not exist on Earth grew under an artificial sky that showed two different colored suns. The air was warm and humid and filled with the sounds of alien animals. Commander Vector was waiting for him. A creature even larger than the others, with scars covering its green hide and eyes like burning coals. It spoke without using the mind voice. "You have 30 of your minutes to run and hide, then we hunt you. When we catch you, your death will teach the rest of your species their place." Taeho looked around the biodome and saw thick jungle areas, rocky cliffs, and open grasslands. He had trained in environments like these all over Earth. Now he was going to use everything he had learned to survive in an alien hunting ground. The creatures expected him to run in panic and die quickly. They had made a serious mistake. They had just put a green beret in his natural element. Taeho smiled and walked calmly toward the jungle section of the dome. The hunt was about to begin, but these aliens had no idea who was really going to be the hunter. Corporal Park Dongmin sat in his prison cell 3 levels below where his sergeant was fighting for his life. The cell was designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in Vorthak space, but Dongmin was not looking at it like a prisoner. He was studying it like an engineer. The walls hummed with energy, and blue light ran through patterns that reminded him of circuit boards he had worked with back on Earth. The energy barrier that served as the door flickered every few seconds in a rhythm. That seemed almost familiar. Dongmin had spent years working with radio equipment and electronic warfare systems. Something about the frequency of the flickers matched patterns he had seen before. He took off his metal dog tags and held them near the barrier. The tags vibrated slightly when the barrier flickered. This meant the containment field was using electromagnetic energy similar to systems he had trained on. The Vorthak technology was advanced, but it still followed basic principles of physics that applied throughout the universe. Dongmin smiled for the first time since being captured. He might be able to work with this. Meanwhile, 3 levels down, Private Lee Soo-jin was making her own discoveries about Vorthak weaknesses. Her medical training had taught her to observe everything about living creatures, and these aliens had several interesting features. Their eyes were positioned like predators, but they seemed to have trouble seeing movement at the edges of their vision when guards entered her cell. Soo-jin pretended to be weak and scared while actually studying their anatomy. She noticed that despite their thick, scaly hide, the Vorthak had soft spots around their joints and necks. Their breathing patterns showed that their lung capacity was enormous, but they seemed to need more oxygen than humans, which might make them tire faster in a long fight. The guards were confident and careless around what they saw as a helpless human female. They did not know that Soo-jin had trained in combat medicine and knew exactly where to strike any living creature to cause maximum damage. She memorized the location of nerve clusters and pressure points, while appearing to cower in fear. During the ship night cycle, when fewer guards were active, Dongmin began his first escape attempt. He had used his uniform buttons and pieces of wire from his equipment to create a simple resonator device. When the energy barrier flickered, he activated his makeshift tool and watched. The blue light patterns changed for exactly 3 seconds. The barrier weakened enough for him to push through. It was not much time, but it was enough to get out of his cell. The corridor outside was dimly lit and seemed empty. Dongmin moved carefully, mapping the ship layout in his mind. He found maintenance shafts that ran between levels and began to explore. The Vorthak ship was huge, but it followed logical design principles. Dongmin found the central communication hub and spent precious minutes studying the alien technology. He could not read their language, but electronic systems had universal elements: input, output, processing, storage. These concepts existed in any advanced civilization. Using his knowledge of Earth communication systems, Dongmin began to understand how the Vorthak network operated. He found what looked like an internal messaging system and discovered that the ship was buzzing with confused reports about the hunting incident in the biodome. Tai-Ho was not only alive, but he had killed 3 elite warriors. Before the guards could discover his absence, Dongmin returned to his cell and reactivated the barrier. His escape had lasted only 20 minutes, but he had learned the ship layout and confirmed that his team leader was fighting effectively. The knowledge gave him hope and a plan. Sujin made her move during the next guard rotation. She had been observing the aliens carefully and noticed they had a specific blind spot in their peripheral vision, caused by the shape of their reptilian heads. When 2 guards entered her cell, she was ready. The first guard approached carelessly, expecting to find a terrified human instead. Sujin moved faster than the alien expected, striking at nerve clusters she had identified during her observations. Her medical knowledge of anatomy worked on alien physiology just as well as human. The guard collapsed as temporary paralysis spread through its nervous system. The second guard reacted quickly, but Sujin had already moved to her next position. She used the falling body of the first guard as a shield while striking at the second alien's pressure points. The thick Vorthak hide protected them from cutting weapons, but did nothing against precisely applied, force-to-nerve centers. Both guards were unconscious within 30 seconds. Sujin quickly searched them and found key cards and communication devices. She could not understand the alien language, but she recognized symbols that seemed to indicate different security levels and ship sections. Using the maintenance shafts that Dongmin had discovered during his exploration, Sujin began moving through the ship toward the communication center. Her medical training had taught her to memorize complex anatomical diagrams, and now she applied the same skills to mapping the alien vessel. The 2 soldiers met in a maintenance area near the ship's central core. Both had been thinking like special forces operators instead of prisoners. They shared intelligence about ship layout, guard patterns, and alien weaknesses. While planning their next moves, Dongmin had discovered that the Vorthak communication system could be accessed using the stolen keycards, but only during specific time windows. When security protocols shifted, Sujin had learned that the aliens were vulnerable to specific types of attacks, despite their fearsome appearance. Together, they developed a plan that would have been impossible for either soldier alone. Dongmin would use his technical skills to access the ship communication network, while Sujin provided security, and used her medical knowledge to identify ways to disable Vorthak systems that depended on their unique biology. Their first target was the ship's internal security network. If they could create confusion among the guards, it would give Tai-Ho more opportunities to continue his guerrilla campaign in the biodome. It would also allow them to move more freely through the vessel. Using stolen access cards and Dongmin technical expertise, they reached a secondary communication station. The equipment was alien, but the basic concepts were familiar: input commands, processing systems, output devices. These elements existed in any advanced technology. Jin kept watch while Dongmin worked to understand the alien interface. He found what appeared to be internal ship communications and began sending false messages. The Vorthak had rigid military hierarchy and specific protocols for different situations. Dongmin used this against them. He sent orders redirecting guards to wrong locations, causing confusion throughout the ship. He also found the frequency that controlled internal lighting and began creating random blackouts in different sections. The aliens had excellent night vision, but the sudden changes disrupted their routines and created opportunities. Sujin discovered medical bay access through the communication system. Her training made her curious about Vorthak biology and potential weaknesses. She found storage areas containing biological samples and began analyzing alien physiology, using equipment that was surprisingly similar to Earth medical devices. The discoveries she made were important. The Vorthak had several biological vulnerabilities, including allergic reactions to compounds found in human saliva. They also had sensitive inner ear structures that could be disrupted by specific sound frequencies. Both pieces of information could be used as weapons. While Su Jin gathered biological intelligence, Dong Min expanded his access to ship systems. He found the biodome monitoring network and was able to observe Tai-Ho continued success against Vorthak hunters. The sergeant had killed 8 more aliens and was using increasingly sophisticated tactics. The psychological impact of these losses was spreading through the ship. Dongmin could see in the communication logs that many Vorthak were questioning whether humans were really the primitive species they had expected. The 3 soldiers were systematically destroying the aliens' confidence in their own superiority. As the ship entered its next day cycle, Dongmin and Su Jin prepared for the next phase of their resistance. They had gathered intelligence, established communication with each other's location, and identified multiple ways to disrupt Vorthak operations. Now it was time to shift from intelligence gathering to active sabotage. The Vorthak had made a critical error when they separated the 3 soldiers. They had assumed that isolation would make the humans easier to control. Instead, they had given each soldier the opportunity to develop specialized knowledge and capabilities that would be devastating when combined. Tai-Ho was proving that humans could outfight Vorthak warriors. Dong Min was demonstrating that human technical knowledge could turn alien technology into a weapon against its creators. Su Jin was showing that human medical science could identify biological weaknesses that the aliens never knew they had. The 3 Green Berets were about to teach the Vorthak Empire that capturing humans was the worst mistake they had ever made. The aliens thought they were dealing with primitive creatures, but they were actually facing some of the most dangerous and adaptable warriors that Earth had ever produced. The real fight was just beginning, and the Vorthak were starting to realize they had seriously underestimated their human prisoners. Tai-Ho moved quickly through the artificial jungle of the biodome. His 30 minutes of head start were ticking away, but he was not running in panic like the Vorthak expected. Instead, he was working. Every step was planned. Every movement had purpose. The alien trees were different colors than Earth trees, but they still provided cover, and the thick undergrowth still offered places to hide. The jungle section reminded him of missions in Southeast Asia, where he had learned to become invisible. In Green Wilderness, he found a stream of clear water that tasted strange but was safe to drink, and followed it upstream looking for the perfect place to make his stand. The Vorthak had made their first mistake by putting him in terrain. He understood near a small waterfall. Tai-Ho found what he was looking for: a narrow valley with thick trees on both sides and only one way in or out, the perfect place for an ambush. He began preparing immediately using skills learned over years of survival training. First, he needed weapons. The aliens had not given him any, but a good soldier could make weapons from almost anything. The alien plants were different, but some basic principles still applied. He found vines that were strong like rope and branches that were straight like spears. He used sharp rocks to cut and shape wood into pointed stakes. The alien thorns growing on some bushes were as sharp as needles and much stronger. He collected dozens of them carefully. Time was running out, but Tai-Ho worked with steady hands. He dug shallow pits in the path and covered them with thin branches and leaves. In each pit, he placed sharpened stakes pointing upward. Any creature that stepped in the wrong place would be badly hurt. He made tripwires from vine that would trigger falling logs and swinging clubs. The most important part was the escape route. He mapped out 3 different ways to leave the valley quickly and quietly. When the first trap was sprung, he would already be moving to the next position. This was basic guerrilla warfare, but the Vorthak had never faced an enemy who thought like a soldier instead of prey. His watch showed that 28 minutes had passed. The hunt would begin soon. Tai-Ho climbed high into a tree that gave him a view of the entire valley and waited. He controlled his breathing and kept his heart rate steady. just like he had learned in sniper school. The Vorthak were about to learn that humans were much more dangerous than they thought. The first hunters appeared exactly 30 minutes after he had entered the jungle. 3 Vorthak warriors moved through the trees with confident steps. They were bigger and stronger than the ones he had seen before. These were elite soldiers built for killing. Their scales looked thicker than armor, and their claws could probably cut through steel. The aliens carried advanced weapons that hummed with energy and made the air shimmer around them. They moved like predators who had never met anything that could fight back effectively. Their yellow eyes scanned the jungle, but they were looking for a running, frightened animal, not a trained soldier waiting in ambush. The lead hunter stopped at the edge of the valley and tested the air with its long tongue. It made clicking sounds to its companions and pointed toward the waterfall where Tai-Ho scent trail led. The 3 aliens entered the valley in single file, following the path exactly as Tai-Ho had hoped they would. The first trap triggered perfectly. The lead hunter stepped on the covered pit and fell through with a roar of surprise and pain. The sharpened stakes pierced its thick hide, and green blood began to flow. The creature was badly wounded but not dead. It tried to climb out of the pit while making horrible screaming sounds. The second hunter rushed forward to help its companion. This was exactly what Tai-Ho had planned for. The tripwire caught the alien's leg and released a heavy log that swung down like a massive club. The impact threw the creature against a tree with bone-breaking force. It slumped to the ground and did not move. The third hunter was smarter than the others. It stopped moving and began to scan the trees carefully. Its weapon charged up with a whining sound that grew louder and louder. This alien had figured out that it was facing an intelligent enemy, not helpless prey. It started backing toward the valley entrance while keeping its weapon ready. Tai-Ho knew he had to act fast before the alien could escape and warn others. He had prepared for this possibility. During his trap building, he had moved several large rocks to the top of the waterfall. Now he used a vine rope to pull away the supports he had built. Dozens of heavy stones crashed down the waterfall and bounced off the rock walls. The third hunter looked up just in time to see the rock slide coming toward it. The alien tried to dodge, but there were too many stones coming too fast. Several rocks hit its head and body with crushing impacts. The alien fell and tried to get up, but its weapon had been smashed and one of its arms hung at a wrong angle. Green blood ran from cuts on its head. It looked around the valley with new understanding in its yellow eyes. For the first time a Vorthak warrior was experiencing fear, Tai-Ho dropped from his tree and landed silently behind the wounded alien. He had made one more weapon during his preparation time, a heavy club with sharp alien thorns embedded in one end. The hunter heard him coming and tried to turn around, but it was too slow and too badly hurt. The fight was brief and violent. The alien was bigger and stronger, but it was wounded, and Tai-Ho was thinking 3 moves ahead. Every time the creature tried to attack, Tai-Ho was already somewhere else. When the alien swung its good arm, Tai-Ho ducked under and struck at pressure points he had identified during his capture. The Vorthak had thick hide, but Tai-Ho had learned during his interrogation that they had nerve clusters just like Earth animals. A strike to the right spot could cause paralysis or intense pain. He used his knowledge of anatomy combined with his club to systematically disable the alien hunter. When the creature finally collapsed, Tai-Ho stood over it, breathing hard but victorious. He had just done something that the Vorthak Empire thought was impossible. A single human using primitive weapons had defeated 3 of their elite warriors. The psychological impact of this victory would spread through the alien ship like wildfire. Tai-Ho quickly searched the fallen aliens and took everything useful. Their weapons were too complex for him to understand quickly, but their communication devices were simpler. He found something that looked like a radio and tried to figure out how it worked. Static and clicking sounds came from the device, followed by alien voices speaking in their own language. He could not understand the words, but the tone was clear. The other Vorthak on the ship were confused and angry. Something had gone wrong with the hunt, and they wanted answers, using hand signals and simple drawings. Tai-Ho managed to activate what seemed to be a camera function on one device. He recorded the scene in the valley, showing the 3 defeated hunters and the traps that had brought them down. Then he found what looked like a transmission button. The recording was broadcast throughout the Vorthak ship. Every alien warrior and crew member saw the impossible sight of their elite hunters lying defeated in an alien jungle. The human they had expected to kill quickly had instead become a deadly predator who turned their own hunting ground into a trap-filled battlefield. Tae-ho picked up one of the alien weapons and examined it carefully. The controls were marked with symbols he did not understand, but the basic design was similar to weapons from Earthpoint. The business end at the target and pull something that looked like a trigger. He tested it on a nearby tree and watched the trunk explode in a burst of energy. Now he was armed with alien technology, but more importantly, he had sent a message to every Vorthak on the ship. They were no longer hunting helpless prey. They were facing an enemy who could think, plan, and kill with devastating effectiveness. The psychological advantage had shifted completely. As Tae-ho moved deeper into the biodome to prepare for the next wave of hunters, he thought about Dong-min and Soo-jin. His teammates were somewhere on this ship, probably in prison cells like the one he had escaped from. They would be planning their own escapes and looking for ways to fight back. The Vorthak Empire had made the mistake of capturing Green Berets thinking they were ordinary soldiers. Now they were about to learn the difference between regular troops and special forces operators trained to survive and fight in any environment against any enemy. The hunt had indeed begun, but the aliens were no longer the hunters. The ship-wide alert klaxon wailed as emergency lights bathed the corridors in angry red. Tae-ho had finally broken out of the biodome, and the consequences were spreading through the vessel like wildfire. He had not simply escaped, he had sabotaged the containment systems and released dozens of dangerous alien predators into the ship ventilation network. Even the Vorthak feared these creatures. Razor-fanged flying serpents from the death world of Keth slithered through air ducts while pack-hunting mammals with acid saliva prowled the maintenance corridors. The biodome had been a prison for these monsters, and now they were loose throughout the ship, seeking revenge against their captors. Tae-ho moved through the chaos like a ghost, using the confusion to advance deeper into ship territory. He had painted his face with alien mud and wore pieces of Vorthak armor taken from dead hunters. His appearance was terrifying enough that several aliens fled, rather than confronting him directly. The psychological impact was exactly what he had planned. The Vorthak crew were now fighting battles on multiple fronts against escaped biodome predators and a human warrior who seemed to appear and disappear at will. Many aliens were convinced they were facing some kind of supernatural demon rather than a mortal enemy. In the communication center, Dong-min was conducting electronic warfare against the ship computer systems. He had learned enough about Vorthak technology to turn their own networks against them. False orders continued to redirect security teams to wrong locations, while system failures cascaded through critical ship operations. The most important discovery was access to the fleet-wide communication network. Dong-min could now monitor messages between ships and potentially send his own transmissions. The invasion force was growing concerned about the lack of regular reports from Commander Vektar flagship. Admiral Zex Ran had sent increasingly urgent demands for status updates, while other ship commanders were beginning to question whether something had gone wrong with the human specimen analysis. The delay was creating doubt throughout the invasion force. Exactly as Dong-min had hoped, Soo-jin had turned the abandoned medical bay into a chemical weapons laboratory, using alien equipment and materials found throughout the ship. Her compounds were ready for deployment through the ventilation system that Dong-min had learned to control. The biological weapons would cause severe respiratory distress in Vorthak, while being harmless to humans. More importantly, she had analyzed blood samples from dead aliens and discovered a critical weakness in Vorthak biology. Their enhanced healing systems could be overwhelmed by introducing specific toxins that forced their bodies to work against themselves. The result would be painful, but non-fatal paralysis. Working together, the three soldiers began their coordinated assault on ship operations. Dong-min activated the ventilation systems while Soo-jin released her biological weapons. The invisible compound spread through the air circulation network, reaching every section of the vessel. Within minutes, Vorthak crew members throughout the ship began experiencing breathing difficulties and balance problems. Many aliens collapsed at their duty stations while others stumbled through corridors trying to reach medical facilities that were already overwhelmed with casualties. The timing was perfect because Tai-Ho chose that moment to begin his assault on critical ship systems. He had identified the main power distribution center and prepared explosive charges using materials salvaged from alien weapons. When the charges detonated, the ship lost primary power and switched to emergency systems. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows through the corridors while backup power struggled to maintain life support systems. The combination of biological weapons power failures and loose predators created complete chaos throughout the vessel. Most of the crew were too sick or frightened to maintain their duties effectively. Commander Vectar watched his ship falling apart from the bridge, where he was protected by the best security systems available. Even here he could hear the sounds of combat and screaming echoing through the corridors. The 3 human prisoners had somehow turned his flagship into a battlefield, desperate to regain control. Vectar. The climactic confrontation takes place on the ship's bridge, where the 3 humans have systematically cornered Commander Vectar and his remaining officers. The Vorthak leader, desperate to salvage his reputation, challenges Tai-Ho to single combat, believing his superior size and natural weapons will guarantee victory. The fight demonstrates everything the Vorthak have failed to understand about humanity. While Vectar relies on brute strength and intimidation, Tai-Ho employs strategy, adaptability, and psychological warfare. He uses the aliens' own expectations against him, appearing to retreat only to set up devastating counterattacks. The battle showcases human unpredictability. Just when Vectar thinks he understands Tai-Ho's pattern, the Green Beret changes tactics entirely. During the fight, Dong Min and Su Jin secure the bridge's communication systems, as Tai-Ho defeats the Vorthak commander through a combination of superior technique and tactical thinking. They broadcast the entire encounter to the Vorthak fleet. The message is clear. Humans are not the primitive species the Vorthak expected, and any invasion of Earth will meet fierce resistance. The story concludes with the 3 soldiers taking control of the Vorthak ship and using it to return to Earth. However, their mission isn't over. They now carry critical intelligence about alien technology and invasion plans. The Vorthak Empire, faced with the reality that their most feared species has been outfought by 3 humans using primitive tactics and superior thinking, begins reconsidering their expansion plans. The final scene shows Tai-Ho, Dong Min, and Su Jin reporting to military command, but the camera pulls back to reveal that their victory was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, word spreads about the species that defeated the undefeatable Vorthak through courage, ingenuity, and an unbreakable fighting spirit. Humanity has announced itself to the galaxy not as victims but as a force to be respected and feared. The story ends with the implication that while the Vorthak may have superior technology, humans possess something far more dangerous: the ability to adapt, overcome, and never surrender, no matter the odds. The Green Beret's motto, De Oppresso, Liber, to free the oppressed, takes on galactic significance as humanity prepares to face whatever challenges the universe might bring.